Welcome to Saddle Up Live, a transformative podcast tailored for women aged 40 and beyond, where courage, God's grace, and a touch of sass are the driving forces behind conquering life's challenges. Join me, Lesa Koski, as I take you on a captivating ride through the multifaceted aspects of womanhood in this vibrant stage of life, covering everything from my journey through breast cancer, the intricacies of marriage, and the joys of motherhood, to the exciting adventures of grandparenting. Together, we will uncover actionable strategies for personal and professional development, providing you with the tools and inspiration needed to blaze new trails and seize every opportunity that comes your way, no matter what your age or stage. Welcome, listeners. This is a sweet surprise. We had JJ Flizanes on last week, and she's back. And I'm so excited because I was so intrigued and just kind of fell in love with your spirit and your wanting to learn, because that has always been in me. And so, listeners, as you know, I've been talking a little bit about what I've learned through your course. I took JJ's course, and what I love is it called I Am Empowered? Is that what it's called, or is that worksheet that I have?
No, that's just the worksheet. So the course is called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have had that down. And it is a roadmap, and it's filled with information. There's another course that goes through your feelings and emotions and your needs, and I found that really helpful, and I actually did a podcast on that. So listeners, go back and listen to that, or take the course, because you get it in there as well. And so we're going to be talking about JJ's course on core wounds a little bit today, and I have questions, but before we jump into that, JJ, I do have a question, and my listeners, if they go back and listen, they'll understand how you need to understand your feelings when you're having an unwanted feeling. Understand it, and then look at what is the need that I'm not getting, and how can I fulfill that myself? And I love that, and I've been using that, and I've been using. Okay, you have to tell me: is it Ho'oponopono or Ho'oponopono?
Ho'oponopono.
Leave.
Pono.
Hey. So I've said it right, but people know I have ponies on my mind because they're right over there in the bar next to me. So, but I've been doing that prayer along with the becoming aware of the feeling. And I told my listeners last week, I just did it last night. There was a worry that popped up, and I stopped and I went, okay, where is it? How do I feel it? And then I know that I tend to overmother, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But then I did the prayer, where I'm like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And I kind of go, I'm sorry, God, please forgive me. I know you love me. I know you're taking care of this, thank you. I love you. And it is truly, I get peace. And like I've never felt before. So I love that. But I do have a question for you on one of the feelings that I deal with. I've always had this. And then, I had that stage 1 breast cancer, and that really scared me. But JJ, I've always been really afraid of sickness and death, like terrified. Like I go into the doctor and my blood pressure is sky high. Like I'm just nervous and, sick to my stomach. And so I looked at that and I sat with it. And I know that anxiety isn't a feeling, it's repressing a feeling. So I kind of dig into that and I go, okay, so I'm anxious and I'm scared. I'm scared, and I kind of feel out of control because there's only so much I can do, right? I try really hard to be healthy and follow the rules to be healthy. But when I looked at what is that need that's not being met, what I came up with is physical safety. And I thought, because I'm thinking like, is my body behind my back being sick?
I'm going to say that's what the obvious, and this framework of the feelings and needs list, I teach it at the beginning of every course, no matter what I'm doing. I think I'm trying to remember. No, Date Your Body. We don't do this because it's in the Rewire program and it's in the Roadmap to Emotional Healing. And I think I teach it at every live event. It's sort of like it's the getting the verbiage down because I first have to make sure that we start from the position of empowerment of that if
Mhm.
you have a problem or you're not feeling happy and you're in a negative feeling, it's always because regardless of your core wounds, regardless of any other framework you want to work with, it's because in that moment there's a need that's not being met. For you though, I don't think you're in that moment you're feeling unsafe, but I don't think it's because you've kind of given up power or control or ownership of your safety to testing, to the medical world, to and I don't know that I think that's the actual need underneath it. So this exercise, which I think I taught last week, is very simple, but it isn't easy. And it's not easy because no one is taught to recognize their needs. And again, it always normally comes with the I need you to, I need them to, I need it to.
Yeah.
There's always a blame of a loss of power and control over to
Oh,
somebody else. What I actually think you're looking for is peace and ease and trust. And I don't know if there's a family history. I don't know if I said this last week. So let me say it now. There are only 6 genes. 6, and I can read them to you if you want me to.
go
6
ahead.
genes that cannot be changed, and if you're born with them, that's sort of the end of the story. Okay, but everything else, people think, "Oh, cancer is genetic." Cancer is not genetic. There is no cancer gene. I mean, there are genes that can be expressed as cancers, but again, it's genetics may there's a saying in the medical world, in the functional medicine, naturopathic, that genes load the gun, epigenetics pulls the trigger. So it doesn't matter if the gun is loaded, you have your
Right.
genes. Whether they express themselves or not is completely based on your epigenetics, which
Right.
is layered into the environment you're in, the stress that you have, the food that you eat, all of the things that you have 100% control over. So, and it has to do with beliefs. So going back to sort of a law of attraction principle, you're going to manifest whatever you believe, not what you are. So if you
Right.
have a fear, which people often do, well, everyone in my family has had this, therefore I'm going to have it. And they actually believe that. So regardless of whatever physical things that they're doing to try not to have that, the belief is they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Because when you don't understand that you get to change the expression of your genes, you get to decide and I hate to say this because it's not me inviting it in, but cancer doesn't scare me. It never has. If I get cancer, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And I know what I won't do because it's looking at the imbalance. In Chinese medicine, I don't know if we talked about this last week, but Chinese medicine, they don't recognize tumors or cancer. It's
Right.
stagnant energy. It's energy that's been stuck. Well, there's a reason it's stuck. And depending on where it's stuck, there is a meridian, there is a chakra, there is an energy system attached to that area of your body. It gives you information about where your energy is stuck. So in acupuncture, Chinese medicine, they're treating the entire person, not a tumor that we're going to go in and radiate or whatever and think that that's going to kill it and get rid of it. Because anyone that's doing that, because there's a lot of cancers, especially breast cancer, that reoccur. I've got a client right now, she's on her 4th time having, and she did traditional stuff the first 2 times and she did naturopathic stuff the second, or the third. And now she's in a whole different, like where, how she's handling or how she's being with this. But it's because, and I love her if you're listening, it's because she actually really hasn't gotten to the root. The one thing I keep harping on about the emotional piece and it's like we've done all the foods and the change and the different
Mhm.
treatment plans and the different medications and the different supplements and the different but there's still a through line of a belief system, like a current. Your belief system is a frequency, it's a current. And if I in the back of my mind truly, truly believe that because my mom, my grandmother, my great grandmother all had this thing, that I'm doomed to get it no matter what I do, I'm gonna get it, regardless of how I live, because that's what I believe. So it's being able to change your belief systems.
Okay, can I jump in and ask you something? That is so true with, like, the high blood pressure stuff because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my grandpa died young." I had watched 2 grandpas. One, like, had the first, like, open heart surgery in the country years I mean, I've seen a lot of that, and maybe that was scary to me. But honest to God, JJ, I didn't think I was gonna get cancer. I didn't think I was gonna get breast cancer. It's not in my family. I don't have big, huge boobs. I was always like, "I'm not getting this." I feel like down to my toes, I was shocked. I was like, "What the hell
Right.
is this?"
But the gift that cancer can bring, as any diagnosis can,
Yeah,
whether it's, and I'm just talking to people who assume certain genetic pieces. Like I
yes.
have a friend who's in town and I heard he has cancer. I haven't talked to him. But I also know his dad died young, and so I have a feeling that he sort of in the back of his mind kind of figured he'd die young regardless of
Mhm.
how he was gonna die. For you and for most people, breast cancer is, as I think we talked about last week, but if not, breast cancer is usually out of balance of giving and receiving.
Yep.
It's the nurturing of others on top of yourself. It's depleting of yourself at the expense of yourself for other people. And that's the gift that if you can get that awareness and change that habit, yes, there's other factors. Potentially, there's the terrain 10 of different factors at your body that creates the foundation from which disease happens, because it doesn't happen overnight, it happens over time. So over
Right.
time, that gets compounded, but you get to say, "Wow, how did I attract this?" Oh,
Yes.
because 'cause I'm constantly out of balance with giving to other people at the expense of myself. And that when you learn that, you can say, "Great, I'd like to change that." I just saw a clip on social media, a doctor on another podcast talking about autoimmune diseases and how women get 90% of the autoimmune diseases, and the personality type that gets
Yes.
autoimmune diseases are overgivers.
I
People
think
that
I saw that. Yes.
yeah, and so it just it and there are cancer personality types, right? For people that sort of don't like thyroid, for instance. Thyroid is about the throat and the throat chakra and having a voice and speaking your truth and asking for what you want and just having a voice, period. So people that have thyroid issues most of the time have been stuffing their beliefs, their desires, their needs because we're not taught. This is not something that we ever get taught. You have to search it out. It's not taught
Mhm.
in school, it's not taught in, anywhere. And so I think it's really important, like I said at the beginning, with this exercise from last week, jjflizanes.com/feelings list. It is
Mhm.
simple, but it is not easy because you do not
Mm-mm.
have models for this. You do not have models for taking responsibility for how you create your own energetic container that either attracts or repels health.
Yeah.
And yeah, because there's a lot of things we don't. I never thought I'd get divorced. Oh my God, you would have asked me. I would have said
Right.
I will never get divorced. Like it was not in the cards for me. I fought tooth and nail, but then at some point there's a surrender that happens to say this is out of my hands. I have done. This has led me through an education I couldn't have gotten otherwise. This has led me through personal development that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. This has led me to the life I have now that I had no idea was in store for me, but the road looked the way that it looked. I needed a reason. I needed a really good reason that I was attached to, that I cared about deeply more than anything, because I can fix anything, but
Mhm.
I can't make someone else
No.
want something they don't want.
Right.
So the lesson in that, while it was, it's life. We come here to learn. And, part of life school is you have to have a challenge so that you can learn something. And it doesn't mean you just suffer. That's the difference. If you take it with a little bit of levity of like, oh, and especially at, stage one, oh, okay, this is my body that I wasn't apparently listening to before. I don't know
Mhm.
what other symptoms you might have had, but the body will continue to get louder and louder until you listen. And
Mhm.
we have the opportunity to learn how to stop and go, what's it saying to me? How do I check in? Like at my embodied healing intensive, I had everybody muscle test. I taught them how to muscle test and I gave them all the chakras and we muscle tested every chakra and every emotion within the chakra to see what was out of balance for people. So they would know where to start with how, what am I looking at for healing and connecting
Yeah.
and reconnecting. I have the list. Let me just read quickly the six because I know someone's going
James.
to ask the six genes. It's cystic fibrosis,
Yes.
hemophilia, Huntington disease, Tay Sachs disease, Marfan syndrome, and hereditary hemochromatosis. Those are the six genes that, again, epigenetics, I'm sure, will still play a role in the intensity of someone's expression. Because, again, if you think about the container of your body and you're all stressed out, the body can't heal in stress. Your adrenaline's going, your cortisol's going, you're not in a receptive mode. When you're in a more relaxed, happy state, you have oxytocin going, you're anti
Mhm.
inflammatory, your body's doing what it needs to do to heal. And sometimes when we get in a diagnosis of any kind, we immediately, and again, it comes down to that belief of, for me, well, I know how to research. I trust my intuition. I had fibroids and went to many, many doctors who told me I needed to have surgery. It was too far gone. And I just cried. Every time I was in the office, I bawled my eyes out because I wanted a different solution and nobody was giving me one. And it took me to the last appointment when I was scheduling the surgery and crying hysterically. I was like, hello, McFly, you do not believe this. You do not believe this because if you did, you'd feel relief. If
Yeah.
this solution was the right solution for you, you would feel good about it, and I did not feel good about it, so I stopped, I canceled it, and 2 years went by, and I did all kinds of things in those 2 years, and I even got rid of one by myself. Wouldn't recommend it. Lost a lot of blood, but I did it naturally. And then my intuition said, go look at the research because there was a procedure that I wanted to do. It was a uterine artery embolization, and it was at the time you if you wanted to get pregnant, they said don't do this because it will hurt that.
Yeah.
This is not safe. So I was like, okay, so I didn't do it. Well, 2 years go by, and then my intuition says, hey, go check it out again. So I go online 2 years later, it's 180-degree different. Now it's the fertility preserver. I'm like, "Okay, great." So I got myself an appointment. I went in, and needless to say, there's a whole story to this, but I'll say, everything was good. Even the fact what the doctor was saying to me, 2 doctors looked at me and said, I will do this, but I don't recommend this. And I said, of course, what do I'm just curious what you recommend. I didn't care or what, not to be arrogant, but I don't trust a lot of doctors because I think they have their 5 tools. And this is what the 5 tools that I have. If you have as many tools as I understand, and then we can have a conversation that's a little bit more inclusive. But when you only have surgery and drugs and a hysterectomy as my only choices, I tend to sort of doubt that you're very well researched in other modalities. So she said, I think a hysterectomy. And I looked at her and kind of laughed. And I thought, you're crazy. So then the other doctor looked at me and said, you make me nervous. And I had to laugh and I looked at her. I had to console her. I said, okay, and I'm coming up with different ways in which this can all work out. And at the end of the day, I said, look, I said, you know what's, I said, it's a 15% chance, right? That this is going to go bad. It's only a 15% chance because the other doctor thought in my age range, forget my health level, that my age range indicated that it was more than 5% because it would have normally been a 5% chance that something would go wrong. So I said to this gynecologist, that's 85% chance it's going to go right. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to do the procedure and it's going to do exactly what it's supposed to. It's going to shrink up. It's going to break down. It's going to slowly over time leave my body. That's what's going to happen. So I had
That's
and there was a whole fighting with the doctor during the procedure. Anyway, it happened exactly the way that I said it was. It would. Nothing bad happened. And the gynecologist, when I went back in, basically was like, okay, what do you want? I'll do whatever you say. You obviously, or you know, you're listening to your body and it's working because I had to fight against 2 doctors about a 15% chance that something was going to go bad. They wanted to take out my uterus. I'm like, no,
right.
but that's what we deal with if we keep giving the power away to. So there's something for your need. I feel that's a little bit of I don't know, is it before you got diagnosed, were you nervous when you went to the doctor or was it since having cancer?
No, I was always nervous about my heart. Always nervous that I would, because I have high blood pressure and always like afraid that I was going to have a stroke because I watched my favorite guy in the world, my grandpa, go through that. And I don't know. And so that was what I was, but I, not so much about cancer. I go in for mammograms, never worried about them. Never was, I was just like, piece of cake.
Right.
It didn't make me nervous, but I am an over mother for sure. And JJ, because I was always people pleasing and I'm still learning, there's been some really big things happening. I'm still learning how to overcome that, but I forgot how to have fun. Like I forgot. And now, like, I'm such a different person. Like I'm painting the laundry room and my son comes in, he's like, I hate painting. I'm like, everything seems fun to me now. It's fun. Who cares? Like I don't have to hurry. And so when I'm doing more fun things, I'm, working out with fun ladies. I'm riding my horses more, playing with my grandchildren. Huge fun for me. But I do over mother and I'm noticing that and I want to really be careful. I also know because of that people pleasing, and that we're kind of getting into what I've learned in the course, the journey that I've taken through that, the roadmap course and through the cancer diagnosis. But I got to say, too, I got to go back and say, I love what you're saying about how you knew yourself with the doctors. And my daughter is a physician. So she's very like, Mom, what are you doing? But there was something really special about when I went through this. It really was a gift and a lesson, JJ, because I found this physician who broke off from corporate medicine, darling woman that I adored. And she said, I wouldn't get a double mastectomy. She's like, it's going to work. I mean, this is another interesting thing. The tumor was very small and it kept getting smaller. Like the MRI showed it one size and then they went in for surgery and it was even smaller. And I'm like, really? You got to do chemo? And they're like, yeah. And even though getting that chemo it was kind of like, it's probably all gone, but because it was the type that it was a HER2, they like to use chemo and the oncologist was referred to me by the surgeon who did amazing. I mean, you're gonna, the things you don't think of, like you're gonna, I don't want my nipple off. Like I didn't even think about that. That's hard for women. And she took her time, made sure she had the margins and saved it. And so like I don't even look different. It was so amazing. So I feel like God brought me those people and then I let it go. I was like, okay, I trust you. And then she sent me to an oncologist at a hospital I never thought I would go to. Never thought I would go to this hospital. And I went there because they are more, it's a teaching hospital. And I always hated having those kids come in. But now that my daughter's, ending her residency, I'm a little more loving about it. But so it was a teaching hospital, but they were more into fitting it to your needs. But this oncologist said, cancer is probably all gone right now. We're doing this to make sure, right? This is a precaution. And she said, I think you're going to tolerate chemo really well. And for some damn reason, JJ, I believed her. I don't know how, but I did. And I hated going in and getting it. It would make me shake because I do everything to support my body. And to like throw this poison in, I was like, oh, but I just knew that it's okay. It's a reset for my body. I'm gonna be okay, and I'm gonna overcome it, and for some reason, I was able to follow it, and I felt like it was right.
It's where frequency and vibration supersede. It's quantum physics. It supersedes everything. Someone who, and let's take vaccines, and I won't go into any politics about it. I'll just say that for people that have a lot of fear about stuff or, are good obedient, do what the government tells you to do. If they feel that this was helpful for them, like remember I talked about relief, like when I was signed up for
Yes,
surgery, never once did I feel good about it. I never
right.
resisted it the whole time. My body was like, kept telling me, no, 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 no. And of course, I'm defaulting on how many doctors have I met with, and they all keep saying the same thing. But my body said no. It was clear. I'm crying. Hello. So I trust myself and more than anybody else. So when it comes to whatever you believe, someone that believes that it might help them. And I'm not saying someone who believes it might help them also might not be affected by it, but if they truly, truly, truly believe that they're going to be fine, this is going to help them, that's probably what they're going to manifest.
Yeah,
But somebody who doubts it will not. Someone who doubts will get not, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have doubt and you do it anyway, that's almost kind of the worst thing you can do because you go against yourself. It's not,
right.
and then the body goes, well, let me show you why you don't ever want to do that again because I'm going to manifest the exact thing you're afraid of.
Yes.
I had a client years ago who was afraid of cancer. She got cancer, she died because she was afraid of it. But she didn't. So let's talk a little bit about what would be next on your roadmap after, you got the basic core wound stuff. It would be making an appropriate, proper map so you could actually understand the different parts of the core wound map and and like how you're responsible for keeping them alive, how you're going to change it. And that doesn't happen because the roadmap course is a self-study course. It's to get somebody familiar with the idea of core wounds, to uncover what your core wounds are, to see the patterns that play out in your life. There's a lot of, even if you just do the exercise as it's given, which I actually had Harville and Helen this week on my podcast. I got to confess to him that I made an entire business around that exercise and developed it into something deeper. And he's very excited for me to share it with him, which I'm very excited about, and for me to write a book about it, which he's also
Wow.
about because I've taken this one exercise that was life changing for me. All I just had to complete what they gave me. And that in itself was life changing because of how I process emotions, how I could see patterns. And the minute that I saw the pattern, I stopped it because my ex husband would tell me, and I would say to him, he's like, that thing you do, it doesn't work. I said, oh, I know. Like I was well aware. I'm like, it doesn't work. Why do I keep doing it? I don't know. I can't stop. I don't know why I can't stop. But then I did the exercise and I stopped because I saw the pattern went back so far and I understood how it was about me, not about him.
Yes.
So I took ownership of that and I taught that way for years. But over the years, it would be hit or miss. Not everybody would be life changed by the exercise. And so as I got deeper into working with people in this way, in smaller groups of people, I'd start to see how this needs to be fine tuned into this. And this is how we're looking at ourselves and how I keep that core wound alive myself every day. If we don't start to change our own habits and patterns and behaviors within ourselves, then we can't ask the outside world to change necessarily. We have to be the ones that start.
Right.
We have to be aware of what it is. So the roadmap course is really about That diagnostic process, I talk to so many people who are even therapists, and and they would have, and even in that episode with Harbaugh and Helen this week, I said, I'm not a fan of traditional talk therapy because you're literally talking about the same things you're already aware of. Like there's no new information, there's no new way of looking at something. It's literally a recycling of the belief system and the information you already have. That's a big, and there's no structure. So when we look at, well, if I'm going to go heal something, like I went for Reiki this week. One of my Qigong teachers, she does Reiki and she offered me a session, and Reiki is a very powerful tool. But if you don't know why you're using it or what you need to expect from it, same thing with hypnosis, same thing with Ho'oponopono, same thing with, I don't care what the therapy is, tapping, EMDR. Why am I doing it? What is the wound that's causing the problem? And what is the behavior or the shift in how I interpret something that I'm waiting to see happen so that I know it's getting better? And
Mhm.
that's where this whole idea of talk therapy or just healing in general is so like elusive. Oh, healing. It's like exercise. Oh, just exercise. What the hell does that mean? As a
Right.
personal trainer, I'm like, exercise more. Doing what? What is the goal? Strength training, flexibility. Do you want me to be a faster runner, endurance? Do you want me to include my cardiovascular? Like exercise more is the dumbest bit of advice anyone can give somebody. So when you say, "Oh, I'm healing or I'm in therapy," okay, how? What are you doing? Are you so let's figure out what the wounds are, at least the top 3 core wounds. Did you figure out what yours were?
Yeah, tell me again what letter that is.
It would be one of the last 2. So, it's the deepest fears. I believe it's the deepest fears page.
All right, I got my
Not the last
like
page, because that's when you put it all together for the imago piece of relationship therapy, but let's go 1 or 2 pages before that.
I'm sorry this was taking a little while. I've got
That's
my
okay.
frustrations.
Deepest fears.
I don't
So,
like it.
what's the page after the frustrations?
Okay, got it.
Okay, do you have any that repeat? You have your mom and your dad and maybe other. Are there any words that repeat on both
Um,
parents?
disapproved of.
Great. Okay, so let's just work with that one. So
Okay.
if you have, and I'll take you through sort of with the map, and that's not what's in this course, although you can start it, and I do start it on I added a 5th week as a bonus to sort of do that. Did you get to that?
Well, is that the question and answer one?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't do that one yet.
Yeah, do that one because I'll walk you through how to put, and it's not even, again, I've been working with this now for so many years, so it's even better now than it was then. But that it starts you on the how do I make this map from this data that I've collected. So let's just look at disapproved of. So you have a core wound of disapproved of. It's probably the first, most important one because if you have it with both parents, then it's probably the strongest. So disapproved of. So when you get triggered in life, one of the top 3 core wounds is what's gonna be triggered. And again, it's gonna be mostly subconscious. You're not gonna choose it. You're just gonna feel bad.
Yep.
You're gonna have a feeling because
Yep.
your subconscious has interpreted you being disapproved of. And then you're gonna have whatever feeling, which you can find that on the frustrations page. And then you're gonna have a response, which is also on the frustrations page. So you'll figure out this circuit. I call it the circuit. And it's what happens immediately. It's built in. It's a reactive pattern that you have. And so while that pattern won't change overnight, when you start to recognize it, when you start to notice it and become an observer of it, then when you get to the action piece, the third part of it, you can choose to act differently, to respond differently. And
Right.
you can get through it faster. Then what happens is people get triggered because they feel devalued, they feel abandoned, they feel ignored, they feel suppressed, they feel smothered, they feel disapproved of. And then we create this whole story and we end up cycling and cycling and cycling in this story that's not true because you don't understand the mechanics of the fact that this was a triggered response. And I could have just let it do its thing and then be done with it. But I took it because it was a thing and I made it bigger. I made it bigger by telling people. I made it bigger by making it a bigger deal than it needs to be, not recognizing that this is a core wound that I have. And the likelihood is I'm going to respond in this way in some degree, possibly for a long time until I expand my comfort zone and do something different.
Okay, I wanna talk to you about something happened. My husband and I have not had like a like yelling fight, like a real mad fight for quite a while. And we were driving to the airport to pick up my daughter, and of course we started talking about finances, which is not a good idea when you're stuck in a car with someone in our case. But we were talking about it and it kind of basically it is he wants me to just take care of everything and I don't want to. I want to do it together. I want his insight, and he doesn't want. He's like, I make it. You figure out what to do with it, and you tell, So he could make me feel. I don't know what the difference between shamed, and disapproved of is. To me, it was real close. So it was kind of like that.
Now that feels more like abandon because you want to do it together and he just wants you to take care of it. He doesn't want the burden of figuring it out because he feels like he's already tired doing what he's doing and he just wants you to and he trusts you. He wants some peace. He wants some
Yeah.
ease. And you want connection.
Okay, that
So
sounds true.
so you probably if you have abandoned on there anywhere or ignored or devalued, that's probably a little bit of him. It's like a rejection. You probably took it a little bit like a rejection. And again, rejection
Yes.
is not feeling, it's an interpretation. So if you're interpreting my husband doesn't love me because he doesn't want to spend time with me on how we're going to spend the money, that's because that's being filtered through your wound. When actuality, he's literally saying, I'm tired. I have enough to focus on. I don't want to do this. I trust you. Just do it because it'll bring me peace. It'll bring me ease. To him, that's the collaboration. I'm going to make it. You spend it and manage it. End of story. We each have our roles and then we don't have to keep talking about something that like it's just too much. Like he wants some space.
Okay, okay, I love this. I love this because I was a little bit concerned because okay, I looked at that and I knew and I was really like working on how is this making me feel? What is this? And then I was thinking I always want to just come and fix it and make him feel better. Is that wrong? Is that over mothering?
It's you.
Because like I don't really want to do it. I don't like dealing with money, but then I thought back to I started taking care of my finances when I was 12 and I didn't want to. I was terrified. I didn't want to do it. And so now I'm like, ugh,
Okay, well, there
was
might be other solutions, and maybe there's something to explore that, like having a money manager or your financial planner, or I don't know, but having another solution that satisfies everyone's needs. You have a need. In this case, it feels like you have a need for connection, and maybe because it
yes.
stresses you, and maybe because it stresses you out, you don't want to do it by yourself because it stresses you out. So you're trying to make it more fun and more meaningful by having connection. He wants space, but when you ask me the question, is it wrong to want to help somebody feel better? It's not that it's wrong. Let me give you here's the reality.
Mhm.
When someone around you is upset and you get triggered and you wanna make them feel better, it's because you're uncomfortable being upset, because it triggers your wound of
Yeah.
not being able to be in that emotion. So the real issue here is you don't know how to hold the space for your own emotions, so you don't know how to hold the space for other people's emotions.
Mhm.
It's like, it's too messy. It's out of control. You don't know how to let somebody.
It is, and I don't know what to do. Like I get like I want to cry, and then I get like I want to yell, and then I like am.
But emotional processing is that. It's about a process. It's about allowing the process, and you wanna repress the process. So you wanna talk about another reason why you got cancer is because you repress.
Yeah. So you're telling me feel those, feel what.
Yes, there is a and again, part of this feelings and needs list can help with the identification. You have to start with being able to allow yourself to have your emotions. That doesn't mean other people have to be involved necessarily or that they need to do something. It's why I used to yell at some of my male clients as a personal trainer because they're women, totally would manipulate them all the time. And I'd say, look, women manipulate men emotionally because you allow them to. Because you don't because the minute a woman cries, a man loses his shit. And he's like, what do I gotta do? And then of course, then the man will say, I don't feel free. I feel I feel trapped by your emotions that make me do things I don't want to do so that you'll be calm. Okay, that's bullshit. Because if a man could learn the same thing women need to learn, which is how to hold the space for someone else's emotions, which means allow them to have it. Allow them to go through the emotion. Don't just suppress it. I had a cat die a couple of months ago, and when Doug and I when it happened, thank God it was like not thank God, but Sunday night into Monday, we both didn't really have any work. We didn't have to cancel any plans, but we both grieved all day. And we literally just
Yeah.
cried. And we took a little bit of a drive but it was a grieving day. And then the next day he had to get on a plane to go back to Baltimore to see his mom. That was already planned. And he was like, this is not a good time for me to leave. And I said, well, maybe it is. So then for the next 4 days, I literally laid on the couch, watched television. I did cancel plans. I did cancel stuff, and I cried and I wailed. I just cried and I
Mhm.
apologized to her. I had so much grief about it, and I was feeling so badly about it. And I'm, in my house yelling and screaming and crying. And I did it as and I didn't have to hold it back. I just let it out. And it was almost a blessing that he wasn't here because I know him, and a lot of men would do this too. There's a moment in time, maybe 48 hours in, maybe less than that, where he would have been like, "Okay, I have to go to work now." And he wouldn't have had to. He would have chosen to because feeling your feelings is not comfortable. And most of the time, it makes you feel out of control. But I went through those 4 days, so I had 5 days of crying and screaming and yelling in my
Yeah.
house, but ever since then, I've been fine, and I've been able to process her death differently and be okay with it, and I haven't cried once about it since then, and I'm not saying that that means I'm over it and or whatever, it just means that I squeezed it out when it happened. There was no repressing, and too often, we do not let ourselves feel because we have to function. We have to be a parent. We
Right.
have to go to work. We have to do whatever is on the schedule. And we don't give ourselves a space to say, no, I can't attend to any of that right now. I had a tragedy happen. I need to check out for a little while and allow myself to feel sad and angry and depressed and whatever the emotion is. So this is why we don't have any skills to do this because we get thrown back into life and then we repress, repress, repress. And the repression creates disease, quite honestly. So
Well, and I have to say, as you're talking about this, I can't help but think of these times when I found out about the cancer and kind of when I didn't know, you don't really know how bad it is, right? Until they really go in and, there were tests to do. And I would go sit on a bale of hay and cry and scream. And it was something I haven't done forever. So, I mean, I think, JJ, that's healing
oh my
in
God, yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
But okay, so now I'm going way over time, and I know you have a cutoff soon. I have one other thing I want to ask you about because I didn't address it on this worksheet, but I thought it was so interesting that I journaled all through this journey that I've been through, and I was writing about my childhood, and I thought that my core wound was going to be abandoned because this is so weird, but it was before I knew about anything, right? Before I knew how to get there. My first shoe memories were when I was about 2 years old. I was lost, and there was a graduation I remember it completely. There was a graduation party for my Uncle Jimmy, and these teenagers took me to this other cabin, and then they just let me walk outside, and I stood outside, and I had no idea where I was, and I could see a lady mowing the lawn. I remember a group of people walking down the road, and my favorite aunt came and found me and picked me up, and I remember my knee hurt and it scratched on her wool. So I remember that, right? And then, my second memory is my mom dropping me in water babies, like, dropping into the pool and being, like, terrified. But that wasn't something that I don't know why it didn't come up on this. I don't know if I don't have big feelings about it anymore.
Again, it goes to the interpretation. I had a client in the very first beta group of the rewire, and she didn't have a lot of memories about her parents or her dad, especially because he wasn't really around a lot. And what kept coming up for her was what other people would say. Oh, your dad should be here. He's abandoning you. But she never felt like she filled out the sheet from hearsay. It wasn't actually her own
Mm,
honest. And what I said to her was, I don't think your love language is quality time. And so she ended up doing the worksheet again, and it changed because, yes, her dad wasn't around, but her love language isn't quality time, so it didn't matter. It didn't hurt her feelings for him not to
okay,
be around, right? So we can see something and say, well, someone else might respond to this in a really bad way, but it didn't really bother me. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you that didn't bother you. You're interpreting it differently.
right,
Yeah, and maybe you trusted at that moment you'd be fine. You were 2. You didn't have any reason not to trust.
right.
Maybe
Okay,
now, in retrospect, you think, "That's horrible, I'd never do that to my child," because you as a parent would feel nervous for the child, but you as a two-year-old self who's connected to source more than anybody is when they're older,
yes,
was not at all afraid because you were like, "Whatever, I'm just observing and being around. Oh, there's my aunt, that's cool. There's
yeah.
the
I
lawnmower."
was a little bit afraid because I was like, "Where am I?" I mean, it was a a time. It was quite a time because everybody from the party went out and searching. But yeah, it's just interesting that those are my memories, but it wasn't something that came out on the worksheet.
And the more that you are with it and kind of work with it, more kind of stuff like taking someone through, I mean, 6 months, 5 months into a 6 month program, people would go after working with something, go, oh, actually, I don't think it's abandoned that my like my strongest core wound. I think it's like when you look at how we're judging it, how we're observing it versus as you start to sort of work with it, which is the fun part because it gives reason and it makes you feel empowered to do something about it. The end of
Yeah.
the bottom line here is that it's not just going back and digging stuff up. You're getting clarity on why you
Yes.
react the way you act, and then you're being given tools to do something about it and change it.
Yep. And one other thing that I want to say that I really liked about it, which I didn't expect, there's a section where you talk about, I don't, the good traits, your parents. It gave me so much peace and I felt so good looking at that. And so I was so grateful for what they did give me. And so that was lovely. And then the other thing, well, I'm going to save that for my giddy up segment that comes after this. It's a exercise that you gave us to do in the evenings, and I'm going to talk about that because it's been life-changing for me. So you have been changing my life, and so I'm going to continue to work through things, and I want the audience to know that we do have that affiliate link, and it's just jjfilzanes.com/Lesa, Lesa, correct? And that'll be
Yes.
in the show notes.
Anybody can purchase the Anatomy of Emotion course, so I'm happy to
Mhm.
throw that in for anybody who's listening, and you can get the course. There's a payment plan or a pay in full plan, and it's a do it at your own pace, and you can repeat it as many times as you
Mhm.
need to or want to, which I would definitely recommend repeating it at least once or twice over a couple of years, a couple of year period if you're really sort of working on yourself because you'll get more comfortable, more things will come up, more memories will come up, more deeper awareness, understanding. So it's called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing, and you can get it at jfilzanes.com/Lesa.
Yay. Thanks so much for being here, for coming back, and for changing lives. And it's fun. I'm not going to lie. I feel like it's a gift. It's fun. I'm so thankful to have met you and to have been able to do this work. And I will continue to delve in so listeners will keep talking about it. So, JJ, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
You take good care.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Saddle Up Live. As we conclude this exhilarating journey together, don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and become a valued member of our vibrant community. Because, as always, every woman deserves to thrive, flourish, and live her best life. Until the next time, saddle up and keep conquering those trails.